Hi guys, today we're talking about self-love. I'll be honest, I wasn't intending to make this video right now. I have a couple of other ones that I'm almost done with, but in my free time I've been reading this book, 12 Rules for Life. And in that, I came across this statistic that it's definitely the most disturbing statistic that I've ever come across. And I could no longer go on with those videos until I'd addressed this subject first. I think the statistic is as good a place to start as any, so here goes. Let's say 100 people are prescribed a certain medication. One third of them, 33 of them, won't even fill out the prescription in the first place. Out of the remaining 67, half of them, 33 more, won't take the medication correctly. They'll either miss doses or they'll quit taking it early, or they might not even take it at all. Only 33 out of 100 people take their medications properly. Now here's where it gets worse. This statistic wasn't just for drugs prescribed for minor illnesses. Let's say there's this guy Miles. Miles had his kidneys fail and has been waiting for a transplant. Now on an average, a patient waiting for a kidney transplant has to wait multiple years before they finally get one. And they need to undergo dialysis until then. Dialysis is a process that involves passing all of the blood from the body through a machine and back. Now Miles has been waiting for a transplant for the past 5 years and has been undergoing dialysis 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time. To say the very least, it's no picnic. It's an extremely inconvenient procedure that has no alternative. Now after 5 years of waiting, Miles finally gets a match. He finally gets a transplant. The procedure gets done successfully with no complications. The doctor explains to Miles that when another person's organs are put inside your body fights against them. To ensure that that doesn't happen, these anti-rejection drugs need to be taken. After explaining the importance of taking these drugs, he goes on to explain how and when to take them. A few months later, the transplant fails. Now we know statistically that most of the times transplants fail. It's not because the drugs didn't work properly or there was something wrong with them. It's because the patient didn't take them properly. But it doesn't make sense. Firstly, Miles had his kidneys fail, which is extremely unfortunate. Then he underwent dialysis for 5 years, which is very inconvenient. Finally, he got a match. He underwent this extremely expensive procedure and got a transplant, which failed. And now he again has to undergo dialysis for who knows how long, just because he won't take his medication properly. Okay, now let's assume Miles didn't get a transplant. Let's assume Miles didn't even get sick in the first place. It was his dog who fell sick. Now Miles takes his dog to the vet, who prescribes him some medication. What happens next? Statistically, Miles is more likely to fill out the prescription and properly administer it to his dog than he is to do it for himself. Fuck, man. Just thinking about that statistic makes me uneasy, makes me uncomfortable, because my biggest takeaway from it is that we as humans collectively don't love ourselves anymore. Let that sink in. We as a human race, the entire human civilization, on average, on aggregate, we don't love ourselves. What the fuck, man? Yo, I'll be honest, over the course of this video, I try my best to address this problem, to talk about why I feel it exists, what we can do about it, and shit like that. But what the fuck do I know? Like, yo, I want to share this with you, that while I was preparing for this video, while I was deciding what to talk about, I realized that sharing that statistic, just conveying it, just talking about it, would take me a good amount of time. I think it took me over 3 minutes just to record that, just to talk about it. For a while I was thinking of scrapping it. I was just going to talk about my experiences and how I handled it and how I went about it. But I realized that nothing I could have said would have done justice to the extent at which this problem is prevalent, to the severity of this problem. I believe my biggest responsibility is to share this fact with you, to share with you the extent at which it is prevalent, so that you can sit down and ask yourself, do I lie in that group? Am I a part of it? And if you are, it is your biggest responsibility. It is your number one moral obligation to find a solution to it, to counteract it, to start loving yourself. You're not going to find a solution overnight or even in weeks or months, maybe even, but it's your responsibility to make that your number one priority. It's a groundbreaking one, man, because we grew up hearing, we've always told that the biggest problem plaguing humanity is that we as individuals are narcissistic, that we are egoistic, we are self-absorbed, we care much more about ourselves than we do about anybody else. But the bigger problem that apparently seems to be rising is that we've stopped loving ourselves, and so we've stopped caring for ourselves. It's a subconscious process. We subconsciously stopped loving ourselves somewhere along the line, so we stopped caring for ourselves. For all of us on self-improvement, in fact, for anybody who's trying to turn their lives around for the better, anybody who's trying to improve their lives, it's a stumper, because we count on our subconscious to help us to a great extent. We know for a fact that our subconscious is in control for over 70% of our days. So while we're trying to make progress, while we're trying to improve, we are in control for only about 30% of our days. The rest of the 70% is up to our subconscious. And even in that 30%, how much are we really in control? Because how many times has it happened that you wanted to get something done? No external factors, nothing came in between. You were actually able to sit down to start, but when it came time to actually start, you just weren't able to, and you said, I'm not feeling like it. What does not feeling like it even mean? It means that while we consciously want to get something done, there are subconscious factors that are preventing it from being able to do it. It means that we are giving in to our subconscious. It means that we are letting our subconscious dictate our lives. Now imagine that that very subconscious is against you. Imagine that that subconscious makes you skip medication that causes severe problems in your life. Imagine handing over control of your life to that subconscious for 70% of your days. Look at it as there being two parts of you. One part who's in control for 30% of the day, tries his best to make progress, does everything he can, improves day upon day, takes steps forwards, and then the subconscious takes over. And then the other part takes over for 70% of the day and undoes all the progress you made throughout the day. Fucks it all up. I remember the beginning days of my self-improvement journey being exactly like that. I would wake up in the morning promising myself, requesting myself, begging myself to please make progress, to please do better, to please to please at least take a step in the right direction. And I would, for 20-30% of the day. That sounds about right. And then the rest of the 70% of the day would just slip by me before I even realized. It's uncomfortable, it's disturbing to believe that there is a part within you that self-sabotages, that your autopilot is programmed to fuck you up, right? I mean, look at it as soon as you take your hands off the steering, the autopilot goes and crashes headfirst into a tree. I think I just described everybody's first few days to weeks on their self-improvement journey. Okay, don't worry, this is not supposed to be a depressing video where I just say that you probably hate yourself and fuck off. Let's now get to why this is, and let's now start trying to solve this problem. To just lay the foundation to begin with, let's start with an oversimplification. Let's start with a general rule of thumb. If you are happy with where you are in your life right now, if you're satisfied with where you are, with the progress with the progress you're making with where you are on your journey right now, you probably have at least a decent level of self-love. But if you are unhappy with where you are in life, if you are uncomfortable with where you are, you might not have a good amount of self-love. Okay, look at it this way. You're going to need to understand this concept to understand any of what I'm going to say. So stay with me. Look at yourself every day as a different you. Think of every day when you wake up, you are a different you. Who you were yesterday is not who you are today. Who you are today is not going to be who you are tomorrow. And it makes sense, right? I mean, if you got hurt a month ago, you're not still feeling the pain. Probably, if you didn't, as long as you didn't severely hurt yourself. And we do exist in the 3 dimensions plus the 4th dimension of time. So every day you wake up a new you. Now where you are today, exactly where you are in life, is accumulation of exactly how all the previous yous have spent their days. Now that could be a good position or it could be a bad position. 2 years ago, when I was sent home during the COVID lockdown, My where I was at that point was a terrible place. My body looked terrible. I was all skinny because I used to gym, but I stopped for about a year and had just been doing drugs and alcohol from morning to night every day, barely eating anything. I'd become completely skinny. My stamina was in the negatives. I remember going down to play basketball a couple of times, and within the first 2-3 minutes, I would be gasping for air. So my physical health was terrible. I had never worked on my mental health, so my mental health was abysmal. I had no scopes of getting into even a half decent university. I was barely passing through college. Every aspect of my life was an abject failure. Today, I look better than I have in my entire life. I have great stamina. I have gotten into University of Sydney for my postgraduate. My mental health is better than it ever has been. Every aspect of my life is as good as it possibly could have been at this point in my life. And so it's very easy for me to have a good amount of self-love because consciously as well as subconsciously, I know that exactly where I am in life today is a result, is accumulation of exactly how all of my younger selves have spent their days. So if I'm happy with where I am today, I feel grateful for my younger selves for giving me this today. It's because of them that my today is the way it is. So I feel grateful for them, I feel love for them. And for the same reason, it would have been next to impossible for 2 year younger me to have any amount of self-love, because how do you love somebody who's fucked your entire life up? When he looked around him, everything that was fucked in his life was because of, let's name it one entity, let's name all of these younger selves one entity, just his younger self, right? So how do you love somebody who you know has fucked your entire life up? It really is as simple as that. Delayed gratification is how you develop self-love. Start doing things for your future self and you'll start to love yourself. But I don't want to just leave you at that. I don't want to just say become successful and then you'll start to love yourself and fuck off, because in all honesty, if you've been on the wrong path for quite some time, if you've been headed in the wrong direction for quite some time, it's gonna be a while before things start to get better. It's gonna be a while before externally things start to get better. So let me share with you what I did when I started on my self-improvement journey. Because when I had started, I knew that I had dug myself into a hole so deep that it would be a while before I finally climbed out of it. So I needed a way to keep myself sane for that long. I needed a way to not hate myself until then. So I did the opposite of what you generally hear. I did the opposite of the conventional advice of zoom out and look at things from a wider perspective. I completely zoomed in. I knew that it was going to be a while before things started to get better, so I just wanted to see if I made good enough progress today. I knew that if I could just have good days again and again and again for a long enough period of time, things would get better. And so that's exactly what I started doing. At the end of every day, I would just take 5 minutes to ask myself, did I make progress today? Did I do better than yesterday? I'll be honest, it took me a while before I started to get consistent yeses for that question. And once I did, because every time I answered yes, I would feel grateful for myself. I would feel grateful for all my action throughout the day. It didn't matter if I wasted some time, if I did a little bit of this, a little bit of that. As long as I was making progress, as long as I was headed in the right direction, I counted that as a win. And I still remember it was just around the time when I consistently started to get yeses to that question, that when I, for the first time in my life, started to feel love for myself. Reading the statistic brought me back to exactly that time when for the first time I felt weird when I started caring about myself. It felt weird because because that is the first time I realized that all my life I never really cared about myself. I never really loved myself unconditionally. It was more like if I did well at something, I would like myself for the moment, and as soon as I did bad, I would again go back to not loving myself. It was finally at this time when I had started to love myself unconditionally, and it was about the same time when this conviction came about, when I decided that I wanted to do good by me, that I loved myself and I cared for myself, and so I wanted I consciously decided that I wanted my tomorrows to be better than my todays. And that is the first time in my life that my conscious and my subconscious joined hands to make my tomorrow better, to build a better tomorrow for me. I really hope this is something that you decide to work on. Life feels amazing when you unconditionally love yourself. You stop craving other people's validation to that extent. You start valuing yourself more. Let me just say that when you know that you have your own back no matter what, it's a wonderful feeling. And I hope you all experience it. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you around.